Okay, we're going to move into the academia portion of the presentations that we have today. Before the break, we heard from industry. Now it's time to hear from academia. And our keynote speaker for the academia portion is Dr. Brian Kleiner, who will speak on the subject of safety in academia, a director's experience. Dr. Kleiner serves as the director of the Myers-Lawson School of Construction at Virginia Tech. The Myers-Lawson School offers both construction management and construction engineering and management degrees. And Dr. Kleiner, thank you very much for bringing along these fine Hokie students with you. How many Hokies we got? Raise your hands. We're going to get grads too. Yeah, if you get any grads there. Okay, that's good. Dr. Kleiner recently launched a unique program that will result in a construction safety leadership degree major at Virginia Tech, and that's exciting. He's received numerous awards and recognition and is the immediate past director for North America of the International Council for Research and Innovation in Building and Construction. Dr. Kleiner has been heavily involved in the planning for this symposium, and he coordinated a cash donation from Virginia Tech to help defray symposium expenses. Thank you, Dr. Kleiner. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Brian Kleiner.
Thank you very much. I am going to start my timer because we in academia are programmed for 50 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes. So here we go. First of all, thank you to the NAC for inviting Virginia Tech to participate and co-sponsor this event. Thank you to Cameron and the National Academies for hosting us. This is a fabulous facility. And so why is Virginia Tech here? Just a couple of plugs. Tomorrow we have our grand opening of our innovation campus in Alexandria. 2 weeks ago, we broke ground in Falls Church for, get this, our smart construction campus. In that campus, HIT Contracting will have its headquarters, and there will also be a tremendous amount of space for industry academic partnerships in the area of research and innovation. And they're expanding that opportunity beyond HIT Contracting. So if that interests you, feel free to talk to me before we leave here today. So the agenda I've been given is, first of all, understanding industry's needs. How do we do that at an academic institution? Secondly, what are some curriculum and staff constraints? And thirdly, what about our ability to meet industry needs and desires? And let me say to the academics in the room, I'm not here to talk about Virginia Tech per se. I will talk about our safety leadership major as an example, but for industry's sake, I'm going to try to generalize where appropriate. I'll highlight that I'm generalizing across our academic institutions, just so industry can get a flavor for how we actually have to operate on a daily basis, and therefore how we would incorporate safety culture into our curricula. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but brief history on Virginia Tech. It opened its doors in 1872 with the returning Civil War soldiers. And so we started out as an all-military, all men institution. One interesting thing is construction education was part of our teaching mission from day one. So the returning soldiers would study construction engineering, construction management, and agriculture, and then of course military studies. But then in around World War II, we started our construction management program, which is accredited by ACCE. we call that building construction. So if you hear me say building construction, I really mean construction management. In 1986, Jesus's former department started a graduate specialization in CEM, in the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department. That's in the mid-'80s. Construction engineering and management came on board in 2008. I came on board as director in 2011. And now, just this year, we moved into our new building, Hit Hall, made possible entirely by our most generous donors. And you'll see a picture of that building in just a bit. So the first topic I was asked to speak about is understanding industry's needs and expectations. And you heard a lot of that today already. In fact, a lot of what I was going to say has already been spoken. So I will not spend a lot of time on what we've already talked about, but I will give you the academic perspective on a lot of what's been talked about and kind of take some deep dives where appropriate. And I have this picture here just to illustrate the point that when we talk about undergraduate education and curriculum, we can't only talk about the classroom, and that's already been stated. The industry is going through a transition. Some would say a transformation. It's getting smarter, more intelligent, and therefore, in our teaching of our undergraduate classes, we have to incorporate as well where the industry is headed. And I'm here to tell you that there is a relationship between safety culture and what's happening and predicted to happen in the industry. So I'll address that as I can. So where do we get our input from industry? I have an executive board of 12 individuals. We have what's called an industry advisory council, which is comprised of about another 50 members from industry. Jessica's a member of that, who you met. And we have a number of subcommittees. We also, for the safety major, form focus groups with industry. We have hundreds of recruiters we speak to. So we have, and I will say the academics around the room have fairly good relationships, if not optimal relationships with industry. And I tell you that because in construction programs in the US, we've developed this culture to have academic industry partnerships. Our colleagues, even in other areas of engineering, don't have necessarily the kinds of relationships we have. And the proof in the pudding is this. If you're a mechanical engineering department, just to pick one randomly, and you have an advisory board, and everybody has a board, do you allow your board to really get into the topic of curriculum and curriculum changes? Historically in universities, that's been kind of off limits. But in construction across our institutions, we are much, I think, more open to industry's influence. So some of this was stated, my feedback, I'll simplify it. I'm going to cover some of the ones that are more meaningful to today's discussion. This has already been talked about, but the industry needs both safety professionals and safety leaders throughout the organization. The reason we called our major a safety leadership major versus something else like just a safety major is to emphasize the point that we really are about grooming leaders. Self-leadership, learn all about safety and safety culture so that you can be a leader and teach others. But ultimately, what we're looking for in safety culture is super leaders. That is teaching others to lead themselves so they can lead others. So we want to be able to train leaders of leaders. This has already been stated, industry needs safety functional integration. You can't have a schedule over here and safety over here, and you can't take that silo approach. This has been stated, industry needs to manage the safety of its subs. And I'm sure if we went around the room and asked the question, most of you would say one of the greatest risks to safety culture in your companies, and when I say companies or industry, I'm including federal owners, but the greatest risk is the subs and what they bring to the table. And are they going along with safety culture? And I'll get to Jessica's point about safety climate in just here in a minute. In the context of where the industry is headed, which is smart construction, industrialized construction, I'm here to tell you we need more attention to safety culture than we did before. There's a lot of new technology, a lot of automation, some of which is automation for safety, smart PPE. We've done research on these different devices. The folks that show up at your door with the marketing brochures, they don't do that research necessarily. And I'm here to tell you a lot of safety devices are unsafe, or they may reduce risk over here and create risk over here. So that needs to be incorporated. Industry, as has already been stated, is looking for OSHA graduates. And we wouldn't be sitting here if we weren't going to say that industry needs safety culture in the curricula and academia. So is that even possible? What are the constraints? Well, first of all, this is a very high level process we went through to create a safety leadership major at Virginia Tech. And I'll say this first bit because I'm not sure everybody's thought about this. But before you're an academic institution that's going to teach safety culture, you ought to have one yourself. So it took us about 5 years. If you read the literature that Jessica reads, it'll tell you that it takes about 5 years to build a culture. And so we took about 5 years and created a safety culture within our school. Don't have time to tell you how we did that, but I'm happy to talk later about that. Then we collected industry's input, focus groups, as I said, develop a plan, design the courses that would be put together in a major, and then redesign program requirements. It was just said a couple of minutes ago that these courses have to fit somewhere. And there was talk about perhaps just integrating components of safety culture versus actual courses. Well, I'll cover that as well. And lastly, and this is unique perhaps to a university, industry needs to understand our governance processes. And in most universities, it's going to take about 1 year to introduce a new course, let alone a new major or a new degree. So nothing happens too quickly in academia. So the goal of this major was really to teach students who wanted to be safety professionals, for sure. But honestly, and I know I'm speaking to several in the room, if you want to be a safety professional, go to Slippery Rock. If you want the full gamut, if you want heavy OSHA, you want all of it, go to Slippery Rock. If you want safety culture and safety leadership, meaning you want the vast majorities of undergraduates to leave the university with a sensitivity to construction culture, safety culture, and you want them to spread the word and be leaders among leaders, then a safety major may be more appropriate. So this shows you, in our case, the 5 courses that make up the major. Very quickly, we have an introduction essentially to safety that Nazila teaches right over here. I will point out that she got a major award yesterday for her innovation in teaching safety culture to undergraduates and her use of virtual reality. So congratulations on that. The second course was our traditional standalone safety course. That's where they come away with an OSHA 10. We can talk offline about the challenges of an OSHA 30 in the context of a course. The numbers just don't add up. But we are making available other means for our students to get the OSHA 30. Controlling construction safety hazards takes basic OSHA and the means and methods to the next level and really focuses on hazard identification and control. Then we have a course, an entire course just on construction safety culture. And then we have a construction industry futures course where we're really doing some futurist looking out into the industry and projecting where this industry is headed. And in that context, where does safety culture and safety practice stand? So in the interest of time, I won't spend a lot of time talking about the culture course itself, but I'll show you some of the topics that are covered. The impact of culture and climate, the role of leadership in safety culture development, ethics, taking care of other people, making sure it's a home safe at night mentality. All those things have ethical foundations. And each of these courses has an industrial engagement component. They're designed to embrace at a project level companies and owners. So I just wanted to give you a sense of where we're coming from at Virginia Tech when we put together a safety major, when we teach our courses. You'll see in a minute, a lot of our safety content is integrated throughout the curriculum, but basically, and some of this is redundant with what you've already heard, so I'll be quick about it. We take a systems approach to safety. Not a big fan of behavior-based safety. If behavior-based safety means carrots and sticks as a way to promote safety. Our cultural orientation is the literature on organizational culture. So when we talk about safety culture, we're talking about what the scholars talk about when they talk about organizational culture. So to Jessica's point, we do differentiate between climates and culture. And by the way, the NAC definition is perfectly good, perfectly fine, very valid. I can support that. But what's the difference between climate and culture? Well, I gave you a hint earlier. It takes 5 years to develop a safety culture or any culture. Most projects, construction projects, are less than 5 years. So how in the world are you going to build a safety culture on a project? And that's one way to look at it. So what you really have in a construction project is organizations with their own safety cultures coming together to perform a project. The project environment is really a climate. So what you're hoping is the GC, the owner, have safety cultures that are then somehow integrated with the subs. And each and every day you have a safety climate that looks a lot like, especially the owner of the GC's safety culture. This is a silly example just to make the point about climate versus culture. 4 days to build a house in sub-zero temperatures in the middle of December. You have 6,000 volunteers who have never set foot on a construction site. You have subs. You have a very small GC that doesn't even have its own safety manager. I played that role in this project. What kind of safety culture could possibly exist on a project like this? Well, certainly it can't be a culture because it's 4 days. And I'm here to tell you, when you bring an owner, let's call them Hollywood, to sponsor a project like this, and you bring a small GC to run the project and 6,000 volunteers, you can see about the opposite of a safety culture, otherwise known as absolute chaos. My NDA ran out a few years ago, so ask me questions later about that. This was mentioned a couple times today, and it's a good opportunity for me to talk about the difference between industry and academia. We talk about the hazard wheel, the energy wheel, and so on. This was a project funded by CII, working with Matt Hollowell of the Gambitese lineage. And what we did was actually empirically studied an approach to hazard recognition and identification to figure out not only if it works, which is maybe where industry might stop, but why does it work? And by knowing why it works, we can improve upon it. Now, you saw Ed's statistics earlier. Pretty much safety performance has been steady state in the United States. You see a 30 to 40% improvement in safety on a project, you want to know what's happening. And this was one of the first really empirical, as opposed to survey-based projects that looked at that. So, and we did partner with Chevron. They were mentioned earlier as well. So, 9 minutes. So balancing the transactional with the transformation, you have to understand that universities across the country are in the business right now of reducing complexity. That's a fancy term for saying increasing efficiency. So I'll talk about some of those constraints here in a second. So there are various approaches, some of which have been mentioned. You could have modules in courses, doesn't cost anything really. You could have individual courses that focus on safety and safety culture in particular. You could have integrated courses where you take your scheduling course and your budgeting course and your BIM course and teach about safety. How many BIM courses really get into safety, for example? They shouldn't be taught in silos. And then if you really want to get energetic, think about a safety major, a minor, or even a degree. So some of the constraints. I realized in thinking about this that industry, the federal owners, we have similar constraints in many ways. We've got budgets and resource constraints. There needs to be a strategic context for this. So somebody asked the question, you know, why should universities do this? What's the strategic context? There needs to be a value proposition. We start a safety major. How do we attract students to that major? As somebody said, is there a premium for doing this, a financial premium? Is it for altruistic reasons? What is the hook? What is the value proposition? And then it's a matter of supply and demand. And let's agree that industry needs, first and foremost, people. And with a shortage in industry and a shortage of, frankly, students joining universities, it's a constraint we both have to deal with. So quickly at Virginia Tech, this may not be true in their other institutions. Recruiting is a constraint. I, as a school director, am not allowed to recruit construction students or would-be construction students. Recruiting is centralized. That doesn't stop me from asking one of my board members to go talk to their middle school or their high school and raise some interest. Doesn't stop us from running summer camps for K through middle school students to even talk about professional careers in construction. We've got a branding problem as an industry. Promotion and tenure, that's a constraint only in the sense that research faculty typically have reduced teaching loads, so that limits our ability to assign them to these different courses. Governance, I already mentioned. It's unique, takes a long time. And then accreditation, I wouldn't even call it a constraint. My personal view is whether it's the ACCE or ABET, and again, I have to respond to both, they could do a lot more in requiring safety culture as part of the process. So in terms of staffing, there are different things we can do with limited budgets. We can hire what's called professors of practice. That name may change at universities. Basically, people who have chosen a second career to teach out of industry. Okay, I'm not talking about adjunct faculty who we also use. Typically, they're retired and come back and teach a course or two, whereas professors of practice, that's their job, is to help us teach. Strong partnership with the owner's rep. This is perhaps unique at Virginia Tech, perhaps not, but we have an incredibly strong partnership with our facilities operation. Folks there, environmental health and safety can come in and teach our OSHA 10 or OSHA 30. As well, our campus, which has always had construction, opens its facilities under construction to serve as field laboratories. So we're testing legged robots in live construction projects. So we work with the contractor, the owner's rep, and a lot of research and innovation happens on projects. And lastly, interdisciplinary collaboration is another way to staff our programs. So lastly, our ability to meet industry needs and desires. I love this picture. The great granddaughter of one of these gentlemen is actually one of our students. We've come a long way. So some innovative and bridging learning approaches that, and I'll key on ones that weren't mentioned in my last 3 minutes. Earn while you learn. Let me pivot here. This is where a student will get a summer safety internship. Okay. They'll come back to campus and then they will have a virtual internship. So they're paid for both the summer internship, the virtual internship. They get a scholarship for tuition and they get course credit. And this, we just finished our pilot year. We're now expanding this. It's wildly successful, as you might imagine. We use a lot of cases to make the classroom come alive. I have found personally, in addition to the construction cases, of which we have about 30 or 40, talk to Ed about if you want some of those, you're welcome to them. But legal cases, students get really interested in the legal processes around injuries, accidents, those sorts of things. This was already mentioned. We could have virtual and physical site visits. We could also have virtual and physical class visits. And that includes, I think it was Jessica who mentioned it, I'll call it the phone your friend approach, where there's a particular lecture, let's say on safety culture, and I've got somebody standing by at a company at the right time in the lecture. I say, well, I don't know the answer to that. Let me make a phone call. And we bring into Zoom or Teams an expert from the industry. We already talked about safety integrated throughout. Workshops for owners and contractors. It goes both ways. We're talking about what can industry do to influence us to train students to go back into industry. Well, academics, those who are equipped to do so, can do workshops for owners and contractors, and that's where a lot of partnerships and dialogue occur. Earlier this week, I did a 4-hour workshop for VDOT and its contractors under a program that Jesus developed into something really special when he was at Virginia Tech. Undergraduate research is another way to blend innovation with safety culture. Company embedded faculty. It's something we do periodically where in the summertime, a faculty member will go work inside of a company. There are other versions of that. Ross Myers, who will be your lunch speaker, called me up one day and said, you know, I'd like an objective third-party look at our nighttime paving operation. So I got in my car and spent a night with a night crew in paving. And if you haven't done that, you really need to. Last couple points. We feel that the future, especially in safety culture, is to be benchmarked globally. There are countries that have really done a good job with safety culture and teaching safety culture. Plug for Mark's CIB WBC conference this summer, where a lot of that exchange will happen. And just lastly, to integrate research with practice and innovation. Currently, we've got 3D printing, concrete printing, demonstrations and research. We've got at the Center for Innovation and Construction Safety, Health and Well-being, part of it, research as well, where we get industry involvement. So to sum it all up, in terms of understanding industry needs, curriculum, development, ability to meet industry's needs and desires, the key to all of these things are academic industry partnerships. Thank you.
So, we have any questions? Comments? Yes, ma'am?
I do. Sorry, guys. I have so many questions today. My name is Tina Chin. I'm from UNC Charlotte. Yeah. First of all, thank you, Dr. Kleiner. I was really amazed, by the construction safety major at Virginia Tech. It's really the first time I heard, there's this construction safety major. And yeah, I just have like a minor question. I'm curious, in your curriculum, are there any components on fire safety and or building code, these things? Because I personally, found that, at least based on my experience at Charlotte, there's some sort of disconnection between construction and fire safety people. So construction people don't know a lot much, about fire safety. And fire safety firefighters, these people don't know much about construction. Also, I think there's kind of some emerging need of fire safety people on site. For example, 2 years ago, there was a big fire in Charlotte. 2 people were killed. In South Park, a construction site. And now we have California wildfire. One of the challenges I think for California was really because they applied the building code in 2008. So the buildings or the houses which were built before that really didn't have any, or enough fire safety features. So I'm curious, whether the curriculum at Virginia Tech covers that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the question. If I understand it fully, we are collaborating with a number of safety entities across campus. Ergonomists, for example, in industrial engineering, fire safety. My next door neighbor is the world's expert on fire safety. First week he was in his house, it burnt his roof down. But mining engineering, very big into safety. So we're bringing in these interdisciplinary experts, which really can help in construction safety and culture.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.